Thank you very much. And thank you to all of you in the audience. We really appreciate you coming out this afternoon. Also appreciate you sending in questions ahead of time. We had some ideas of the things that we wanted to talk about, but we wanted to make sure that we also address things that were of particular interest to all of you. So appreciate those questions. We were able to weave most of them into our presentation today. We also, and we kind of guessed at some things and we guessed right, and we guessed at some other things and we didn't guess right, but we're going to tell you about that stuff too because I've got the microphone. So thank you, Chris. Again, my name is George Smith. I'm the City of Lacey's Economic Development Coordinator, and you're going to hear a little bit more from me a little later on. First, my colleagues, Ryan Andrews, who's our long-range planning manager, will talk about things from that perspective, and then Sarah Schelling, easy for me to say, our senior planner, will talk about things that are currently in the works and just around the corner. What I did want to do is I wanted to start off and share with you the questions that you and your neighbors sent in. Most of them will be answered in the presentation, but 2 of them we're going to answer ahead of time. So the first question is, how many warehouse lots are to be developed along Marvin Road? None at all. What makes you ask? What is the plan for the big trucks that block and slow traffic on Marvin Road? We'll be talking about that. What will be done to keep traffic moving while the freeway overpass is being reconstructed? We will talk about that, and in fact, I'm going to end the presentation, since I'm going last, on some things that are going on with Exit 111, the Marvin Road interchange, some things that we're doing in conjunction with the Washington Department of Transportation. And I've got some handouts if there aren't more than 75 of you. If there are, then I'll give you a website. What building permits are in process in the area? Sarah's specifically going to be talking about that. Why does the city keep approving sales to developers who only clear cut and then let the land lie there bare for years? Orion's a prime example across from the Home Depot distribution center. Sarah's going to be addressing that. And then the last 2 questions, I'm going to go ahead and answer the first one, and that is, when will the rest of Marvin be 4-laned, and when will the roundabout at Hawks Prairie and Marvin double lanes? I've got good news and fair news. The good news is the roundabout is actually in the design phase right now. I talked with one of our transportation planners in our Public Works Department today to get an update, and so they're in the process of designing. The second answer to that, and the answer to the Marvin Road, is money, as is often the case. As you might well imagine, there's some right-of-way acquisition that'll need to happen. There's paving that needs to be done. When the economy is going great guns as it is right now, suddenly the cost of asphalt and other materials that are used for paving roads goes up. The cost of labor goes up because the availability is less plentiful. I was working in Fresno, California when the Great Recession really hit, and that city, which is a city of just over 500,000 people, had a lot of challenges to begin with, and that didn't help. They were a recipient of a lot of the ARA funds, the American Recovery Act funds, and what they found when they were applying for those funds is they thought, gee, we're going to get enough money here to do about 1.5 miles on this road that needs to be redone. And when they got the bids back, they did the whole road because the bids came in so low because of the low price of the asphalt, the low markup that the contractors were putting on it. So unfortunately, it's just the opposite now. But we're seeking funding. Our folks in our transportation section of our Public Works Department are very good at finding money. So this is a high priority, and it's something that we will be doing as soon as we can get the funding to do it. But the roundabout is already in the design phase. And finally, the last question, which my colleague Ryan Andrews will be addressing, is if and when will Tanglewild be annexed into the city? So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Ryan. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to refer to my notes. I work with Ryan all the time, and it's a great pleasure to do so, but I don't want to leave anything out. Ryan is a planning manager for the city of Lacey, where he has been for over 12 years. God, he looks so young. In that time, he has worked on a variety of long-range planning issues, including comprehensive planning, regulation and code development, and sub-area planning, including project management in the city's Woodland District strategic plan, which won an award on the Governor's Smart Communities Award. Ryan also manages Lacey's permit counter that gives him the unique connection between policy and implementation. He brings to his position experience in county and small town planning in Western Washington, having previously worked for Thurston County and for the city of Westport. Ryan is a graduate of Washington State University with a degree in landscape architecture. Ryan Andrews.
Thank you, George. Thank you, everybody, for having me. I really appreciate it. And I've been around a long time. Even before working full-time for the city, I worked seasonal in the summer times and actually worked on constructing Willamette Drive back in the late 1990s, and remember golfing right here when this was nothing but Scotch broom. So how things have changed and grown, and that's what I'm going to be talking a lot about. The way I'm kind of structuring my presentation, the way we're structuring all of our presentations together is that we're kind of going from broad to more narrow in focus. So I'm the very broad, like looking at all of Lacey. I'll touch on some things that are happening in Hawks Prairie, but I want to talk about the broader community. And one of the things I wanted to touch on to begin with is, why is planning important? Why do we plan? So this is very 30,000 foot level. We plan to protect and enhance the good things about our community. We identify community needs and agree on the best way to meet them. We identify our local spending priorities. We build our sense of community, and we enhance our regional community. So these are some very broad, overarching goals that if you go to Lacey, Olympia, Tumwater, Tacoma, Seattle, we all plan with these various things in mind. If we don't plan, we end up like this. We get a lot of mileage out of this slide, and I just love it. Lacey does a lot of good things planning-wise, there's no doubt about it. We used to not. This is Pacific Avenue, 1973, looking eastbound into Lacey from what was then the railroad trestle, which is now the Chehalis Western Trail. Kite Girl, if you know where Kite Girl's at, today she sits right here. Kite Girl, the Kite Girl statue that she's flying the kite in the middle of the street. So you can see with, we didn't have a planning department in Lacey until about 1986. So back in 1973, you could see, here's Pacific Avenue, one of the busiest arterials in town. The signage clutter is obvious, the billboards, the above ground utilities, the power poles and power lines. I hope you're not a pedestrian, because I don't know how you're going to get around. There's no sidewalks. So, planning is very important in context of the city. It helps us achieve a lot of different things, and it helps us develop a community. Why do we plan? Well, part of it is because we're required to, and that is part of a state mandate that came through some state legislature back in the early 90s called the Growth Management Act. And the Growth Management Act established 13 planning goals. I'm not going to read all of them there. They're actually 14. They added shorelines later. But what it really comes down to is, urban growth and reducing sprawl. So making urban places urban and making rural places rural, or keeping rural places rural. What that does is it has less cost associated with it for infrastructure. We're not sprawling to the hinterlands. We're keeping things contained and focusing growth where those urban facilities exist and not pushing growth to where they shouldn't go. Well, why do we plan? We plan because people are coming, and whether we like it or not, we better plan for it. This is directly out of our community vision. I'll read it to you here. Lacey must accommodate another 30,000 people and 12,500 homes plus jobs and services in the next 20 years. So if we don't plan for that, we're gonna have 30,000 people and 12,500 homes, whether we like it or not. And that's a proven fact. We've done these projections before, and we've been off by several hundred people. So those people are coming. So what we do is, in planning, is provide a balance of land use activities that promote the overall quality of life, protect environmentally sensitive areas, to make Lacey a great place to live, work, shop, and play. So how's that vision articulated throughout our planning documents? Well, again, that statement I just said, that's our community vision. That's the top of the umbrella, or the top of the funnel, top of the pyramid here. And it's articulated through our city's comprehensive plan. And that comprehensive plan is made up of a variety of different elements. It's our land use element, our utilities elements, our economic development element, a bunch of different plans that are articulated, adopted by the city council, and that puts forth how we will grow in the future. As a part of that is implementation, and those are the things that Sarah will be talking about, those permits, the projects that come out, the new roads and those kinds of things. That's how our community vision is implemented. It's implemented as a partnership. That partnership, number one, is a partnership that involves the city, but it also involves private development. And without private development, we will never see our vision taken on. So we have 4 framework policies that make up that community vision, so that broad statement. I'll read them to you here. Create a community of diverse and vibrant neighborhoods that contain a mixture of uses, housing types, convenient commercial opportunities, schools, parks, and open spaces. Ensure a diversification of employment opportunities in Lacey to Lacey residents, or so Lacey residents can work, live, shop, and play all within close proximity. And I think today this is more important than ever. And when I was growing up, I grew up in the area, and Lacey was always kind of a suburb of Olympia, a bedroom community for Olympia. And that's how Lacey actually started. It was born out of essentially Olympia's sprawl. The voters incorporated before Olympia could take it over and incorporate it into Olympia. Today that's changed, and we are actually a bedroom community for Pierce County. So, we want to make sure to keep Lacey residents being able to live, work, shop, play here, because that reduces stress on our infrastructure, and it keeps our community members without having to leave the area to bring back their income on a daily basis. We also, the third one, focus growth to targeted areas for infill to conserve vacant land at the periphery of our unincorporated UGA. That stands for unincorporated urban growth area. I'll talk a little bit about what that is here in a second. Increase density for areas with a range of transportation alternatives and conserve resources related to the extension of infrastructure. And talk a little bit about transportation. Ensure a coordinated street system that encourages all modes. So here is everything on this map is our urban growth area. So we have a somewhat unique planning structure here in Thurston County in that we jointly plan with Thurston County for our urban growth area. So Lacey has an urban growth area, Olympia has an urban growth area, Tumwater has an urban growth area, Tenino has an urban growth area. The cities actually take the lead in planning these areas. So it includes Lacey city limits, which is the area in the gray, 17.5 square miles, a 2017 population of 48,000 and a little bit more. And the stuff that's in the color on that map are unincorporated urban growth area, actually in unincorporated Thurston County, which is a little bit less, 15.77 square miles and a 2017 population of 35,470. So there you can see the totals. One of the unique things about growth in our area is that by the year, I think it's by the year 2030, our unincorporated urban growth area will actually be more populated than the city limits. So that's kind of backwards thinking, right? You think people should live in the city and on the periphery should be lower, lower densities and less people. But actually for our urban growth area, that area will see so much residential development, I'll talk about that here in a little bit, that it'll actually be more populous than the city. Let's see, so this is a map showing all of the available, or I guess undeveloped, commercial and industrial property in Hawks Prairie. So to give you some context, Jubilee, I think we're probably right here on the map. We're sitting right here today. So you can see Marvin Road kind of on the left, Meridian Road on the right, Britton Parkway, this is Cabela's. So these are commercial and industrial properties that are currently undeveloped. So that's a total of 970 acres for commercial. So I know a question that will come up is, or will be answered actually in the presentation is, where's our grocery store? Or when is that coming? So we do have a lot of available commercial property. and that's where we will see the bulk of our growth within the next 20 years in Hawks Prairie is actually that commercial and industrial property. We do have 670 acres of industrial, and that's light industrial. Actually, it's probably, this is 2015 information, so it's probably even less than that today. We do have 300 acres total of commercial, so that 970 is a combination of the two. So we did a market analysis in 2015, this Lacey Community Market Study, to give us an idea of how we're growing, what are some of the key people we should be reaching out to as far as trying to bring those grocery stores in, and who should we talk to? What does the community think is important? Where do we project the growth? What's happening in the community? Our projections in 2015 were that in just the Hawks Prairie area alone, 4.3 million square feet of non-residential building. As a part of that, the 1.260 square feet or million square feet of industrial building between 2015 and 2035. Just so you know, this number, so this is included in this. So this is 3 million square feet, give or take, which we do have the property for, and it could be absorbed. I think what George will tell you is that's a very aggressive number at this point. The 1.26 million square feet is not an aggressive number. In fact, we already have permitted 1.26 million square feet of industrial building. So you can see between 2015 when this was done and now, we already have that coming online. Hawks Prairie also will be a big employer. 8,787 jobs projected to be added essentially in the next 20 years to the Hawks Prairie area. On the residential end of things are very different. On the residential end of things, we're just about done. We're pretty much built out. So this is, again, 2015 information. We are, on this map, right here, you can see these little kind of pockets of Jubilee that have been constructed now. I know this has been constructed. There's, I think, the last two phases, which are in development right now or in preliminary development. Some of this property in and around the Woodlands Golf Course has been all developed. This is adjacent to the new middle school. Some of this down here around Cabela's has all kind of been developed. So at this point, there really is very little or no available land in the urban growth area for residential development. You can see the numbers up there as far as the amount of acreage that we had in 2015, but essentially at this point, there's zero. You can see there the projected new housing units. A little bit less than 1,700 new housing units that will be coming online in 20 years, and 4,000 new residents. So with that, I do have one slide here. This is kind of a promo for one of the planning projects that we've got going on right now. It's in a different area of the city. It's not in Hawks Prairie, but I did want to make you aware of it. What we like to tell people is if you involve yourself early in the planning process, that's really where these plans are envisioned. This is really where things happen. If you are involving yourself in the process when the development, when the bulldozers are there, when the housing or the commercial is going up, that's too late. So specific to this area of town, this is the Lacey Boulevard Pacific Avenue corridor, right around St. Martin's University. So St. Martin's is here. Homa Park, Lacey Post Office, actually right there. The Lacey Village Shopping Center, which is the Walgreens. This area is kind of the historic center of Lacey and has seen better days, for lack of a better term. It's an area that has really fast roads. We converted them to one-way streets not too long ago. And there's a couple of things that are happening that are exciting. We want to kind of build on that. So one of them is a new senior apartment complex at the former Albertson site at the corner of Carpenter Road and Pacific Avenue, 300 new senior apartments there, as well as a future train depot museum. And that will go, actually it's not on the map, but right about here, the actual, where the train depot that served Lacey back in the 1890s was located. So we're seeing some private investment, we're seeing some public investment. See that partnership? It's going on again. So we want to take advantage of that. We do have some public events coming up at the end of the month. They're at our future City of Lacey Museum at the big yellow warehouse on 5700 Lacey Boulevard. happening during the days, during the daylight hours on February 26th, 27th, and 28th, and then the evenings following. So we'd like to invite you all out if you have any interest in planning that area. I know it's not Hawks Prairie, it's a few miles away, but I'd like to invite you out and be involved in that process.
Excuse me, I missed, what museum is it?
So our city museum, City of Lacey's museum. So we do have a museum. It's in an old house in our historic neighborhood. It will actually be moving here probably within the next year. So that concludes my part of the program. The one question that George did leave me with is, if and when will Tanglewild be annexed into the city of Lacey? Does everybody know where Tanglewild is? Any? No? Yeah? So Tanglewild is Martin Way area. So there's some unincorporated Thurston County between Carpenter Road and Galaxy Drive. Winco is actually not in Lacey. Winco is in unincorporated Thurston County. So the question comes up often, when are we going to annex that area? And we just recently completed a study, the city did, to look at that area and found that it would cost us about $3 million per year to annex that area and services. So that's things like police officers and code enforcement and permitting and those kinds of things. So we are not likely to take on that area anytime soon because it comes with some strings attached. And so it's something we monitor, but it's not likely to happen. I can't give you, it'll be 5-10 years. It may be 5 or 10 years, but it's something that probably will be a little bit farther out, or later rather than sooner. So, so I hope that answers that question. So with that, I will bring up Sarah. There she is. Sarah Schelling she earned a bachelor's degree in community, environment, and planning, as well as a master's of urban design and planning with a focus in land use and hazard mitigation from the University of Washington. She's a dog and I'm a coug, and it's not lost on us, believe me. After receiving her master's degree, Sarah spent 3 years working for the Federal Emergency Management Agency as a floodplain manager in the National Flood Insurance Program. While with FEMA, she was deployed around the country a number of times to work as a disaster response coordinator, following federally declared disasters deployments, including work in Florida during the 2004 hurricane season, when 4 hurricanes impacted the state, and in 2005 to Mississippi as part of the response efforts related to Hurricanes Katrina and Rita. And when she got hired, because I was there and I remember, we all called her FEMA girl. So with further ado, FEMA girl. After getting her fill of Southern summers, she left FEMA and has been a land use planner for the city of Lacey for the last 12 years. Sarah works with local citizens and developers on issues related to land use planning, including, among other things, zoning, design review, permitting, subdivisions, and commercial site plan reviews. She sounds pretty busy too. Sarah is certified by the American Institute of Certified Planners. So with that, thank you very much. Here is Sarah.
Thank you, and good afternoon, and thanks again for having us out here. It's a pleasure to be out here to tell you a little bit about long-range planning and current planning and all the activities that are going along or around her that are occurring in the city of Lacey, up in your neck of the woods, things that you see every day. The night, is that better? Yeah. Okay. Bear with me, I don't think I have ever felt as tall as I do right now. I am a woman of short stature, so it's really odd for me to be looking down at everybody rather than kind of up at you all. But again, thanks for having us. As Ryan mentioned, I am a current planner with the city of Lacey, and he's mentioned he started talking about broad range, wider scope planning, and I get down more into the weeds. The current planning, I review building permits, I review site plan review applications, I work with local citizens and developers on both new construction projects as well as redevelopment projects to ensure that they are compliant with city codes and regulations and that were adopted in light of all these plans, the long range, the land use plan, and all the other plans and ordinances that we've adopted. So I'm going to take you through a number of different projects going on in the city. We'll start with the Northeast area. I know you're probably most interested in that, but I'm not going to stop there. I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that have happened out on the eastern edges of the city of Lacey, as well as what's been going on down in the Woodland District. But first we'll talk about the commercial projects up here in the Northeast area. Whoops. I figured out how to go backwards, I think, George. So first we're going to start, this map, I'm going to have we'll see a couple different times as I go through this. I'm going to talk generally about some projects, and then I'll bring up a couple site plans as well, so you can see greater detail about some of the bigger projects. Some of these projects are completed, and some are just currently underway. The first one we're going to talk about is the one closest to you, that was completed in 2017 and came online, I believe, in September of 2017. Just south of 41st, on the other side of the 300-foot buffer on 41st Avenue, is the Medline Facility, 700,000 square feet. And that is a medical warehouse distribution center. Eventually, they plan on doing some light manufacturing of medical products from that facility as well, increasing the number of jobs at that facility. As I mentioned, this facility is constructed and underway. Immediately next door to that facility is a project that we anticipate a building permit on sometime in the next couple months. It's Orion Properties, and it's going to be a freezer warehouse for a grocery company. 128,000 square feet. We don't have actual building permit. We have approved and reviewed their design review application, but we do anticipate their building permit in the next couple of months. Also, not actually shown on the map, but in this location here, this is a Trader Joe's warehouse facility, and they're also proposing to build and construct a 97,000 square foot freezer building to expand their capabilities in that location as well. We'll move down a little bit further to the south to one of the projects that you've probably seen and noticed fairly recently, the IDS Uline facility here, and I have a site plan for you. This is a 5-building complex, 1.6 million square feet of light industrial buildings. Their site work is underway at this time. This was approved back in 2017. It's on about 90 acres. And immediately then to the south of it spans both Marvin Road and Hogum Bay Road to the east. 31st Avenue here is going to be constructed as a portion of this project to facilitate connections across the roadway system. One of the facilities is called Uline, and I think they manufacture just about everything. George might be able to, office facilities, office supplies is what they do. And they're actually moving their plant from Auburn. They're trying to move all their workers from Auburn as well to this facility because they like the city of Lacey. So they'll be moving here in the next year or so when their facility is opening up. We'll go back to this map and we'll talk about some of the other projects that I don't have site plans for, just immediately south. And this is a really new, I don't have a lot of details on this potential project. We're actually meeting with applicant tomorrow. The city, we have pre-submission conferences every other week with applicants or potential applicants for potential projects in the area. And this is a 22-acre site to the south of the IDS building, and it's encumbered by a number of wetlands. It's a pretty sensitive area, and we have been approached to meet with an applicant on a behavioral health facility in that area. I don't have any more details other than it's a behavioral health facility on that spot. This process, I can tell you about what the approval process for something like that would be. It's an essential public facility, and it's also a conditional use permit application. So it's a fairly lengthy public review process in order for something like that to be approved in the light industrial and anywhere in the city, quite frankly. But the essential public facility conditional use permit review actually requires a 90-day early notification review even before they submit an application to the city of Lacey. And what that's intended for is to require the applicant to provide early notification to all potentially affected persons and jurisdictions. So they should, technically speaking, be probably holding meetings, letting the community know that this is something that may be coming to their community even before they submit their land use application. Once they submit their land use application, they then have to go through a conditional use permit process, which is another public review process It goes to the City of Lacey Hearings Examiner for review and approval, or for review, and then it's forwarded on to the City Council for final approval. It is a long process, and there's lots of opportunity for public involvement. As I said, I don't have a ton of information about that project at this time because we are just meeting on it for the first time tomorrow. But if you're interested in it, you can give us a call. You can watch that site, because once we do receive an application, it will be posted with a notice of land use application on the site. Keep an eye on those types of things, and we're always happy to give information on that or to take public comment on those types of things.
So what is the cross streets for that?
It is Marvin Road. Sorry, this is Marvin Road here, and this is 31st Avenue Extension, and it will be 31st Avenue will be constructed with the warehouse project that is underway. Well, right now it's just called proposed behavioral health facility. So it's a hospital. It's a mental health hospital is what it is. So in that same area, I do think something will happen with that project in the next 4 to 6 months. We'll start seeing maybe a land use application 4 months or so from now, if that's going to move forward. So moving on to a different project in the same area, also a conditional use permit as an essential public facility. WSDOT, Washington State Department of Transportation, has some property out here in the light industrial area, and they're planning on constructing their regional headquarters. And we also anticipate that application. We don't have an official submittal from them at this point, but we do also anticipate that application coming forward in the next couple months. And I have a site plan to show you on that one. I'll point that out to you right now. Whoops, I won't point that out to you right now. There you go. So they own all 3 of these pieces of property. Their initial proposal is focused on this portion of property. They're furthest to the west. I'll show you what that site plan looks like. So it's going to be fleet operations as well as some other operations out in that at that site. As I said, we don't quite have an application on that, but we do anticipate that in the next month or so, 2 months maybe. Moving a little bit further to the west, or to the east, sorry, there are a few other things also underway. Actually, I'm not going to move to the west quite yet. Just at the corner of Hawks Prairie and Marvin Road, you all know, I'm sure have seen the ARCO facility. We anticipate that to be open in the next few months as well. That property owner, while he is actively looking for leases, he hasn't committed to any, or he hasn't let us know about any other leases at the South Bay Village property yet, but he's actively pursuing those, and with the construction of ARCO, he anticipates being able to get a few other leases and get some new construction on some additional buildings underway as well.
Does that include our grocery store?
I'm going to let George talk to you guys about the grocery store in just a few minutes. Now I'll move a little bit further east. Over on the Conco, this is a Conco site, and it's 5 warehouse buildings. They've actually constructed 3 of the 5 of the total, 5 that they will eventually construct. And then off to these 2 properties as well have small warehouse buildings. I-5 Designs has a facility elsewhere in the light industrial district. They're sign manufacturers. They have run out of space at their current facility and will be constructing a new facility in this location here. The Fastenal property here, which was cleared a number of years ago, the property owner actually, we've heard from them again. They met with us not too long ago, maybe a month and a half ago, and they actually have some plans to potentially be building by sometime this next year. I'm hopeful that that's going to move forward at this point. And that leads me to one of the questions that we received on this, and that was regarding allowing trees to be cleared and then lots to remain undeveloped. And this has happened a couple times in this area over the last probably 10 years. The Fastenal site in particular and the South Bay Village site are ones of note. And unfortunately, both times, the developers have really been victims of unfortunate economic circumstances. The city has several stages of permit review that we go through before any type of site work can be undertaken. And once the applicant, the first stage is land use review approval. So that's, they have a pre-submission conference, then they submit their land use application to me or one of the other current planners. We review it. put conditions on it to ensure that it meets all city codes and requirements. Once they receive that land use approval, they're able to start developing their civil drawings or construction drawing plans, showing how they're meeting infrastructure requirements, how they're stubbing to water, what if they're building roads, doing all those types of things, as well as putting together their grading permits and submitting their permit applications for grading and site work. Once they've submitted those plans to us and shown that they meet the requirements, we issue the permits. Typically, once they meet that stage, they have already invested a significant amount of money, because it is not cheap to hire engineering contractors and architects and whatnot to get to the stage where we can actually issue a permit. So once they reach that stage, they've already really invested a significant amount of money, and we assume they're ready to move forward with their project. And at both Fastenal and the South Bay Village site, property owners did have plans to move forward almost immediately with buildings. At the South Bay Village site, the tenant that the property owner was going to build for pulled out. She decided she didn't have the funds to invest in that property, and he's a small local developer and didn't have the funds to move forward anyway, or without a tenant. And so that was the stage with that, and that was right in the center of the recession, and he just didn't have the funds to move forward. Fastenal, essentially the same thing happened to them. They cleared the property, got some infrastructure, graded it, got the pads ready to be under construction, and then couldn't get it financed. And those things are really unfortunate. We hate to see those types of things happen. We have regulations in place, and we try to prevent those types of things. We want to make sure that projects are ready to move forward before we issue those grading permits and those land clearing permits, because we don't like it how it looks any more than you guys do, for sure. But unfortunately, we can't predict what's going to happen with any certainty with the economy or with their financing. So with that, we're going to move on to the residential in the in the northeast area. As Ryan mentioned, there's not a lot of residential property in this area. We're nearly built out, left to build anyway. We're nearly built out, but there are a couple things going on that I just thought I would update you on. One in particular, Hawks Prairie Phase 3 Units 17 and 18. You guys are almost built out. This is an almost built out community. I'm sure you guys will be very happy once the construction vehicles stop moving through your neighborhoods. Unit 17 is 49 lots, and Unit 18 is 19 lots. We met with the developer not too long ago, and Unit 17, I think they want to submit a final plat application and maybe have some saleable lots within the next year and a half. Unit 18 will follow soon thereafter. Out in the county, they're connecting to 56th Street as one of the secondary accesses for that development. That is already underway. They've received their county permits, and they're constructing that roadway as we speak. So this is in progress, and hopefully within a couple years, you guys will be done seeing the construction trucks. Also out in the northeast area, a much smaller subdivision. This is just off of 32nd Avenue, and I apologize, I don't have a vicinity map to show you, but it's right near the DOT property that I pointed out a little bit earlier, near the Eagle Court subdivision on 32nd Avenue. There's a application in land use review right now for a 26 lot duplex subdivision, so 52 units of duplexes. A couple local builders will be building those units as duplexes. That is about it that I was going to talk about up in the northeast area. I think George may touch on a little bit potentially of for any potential for commercial activities up in this area. But we don't have any updates as to, or I don't have any current land use project updates on commercial in the Gateway area at this time. So I'm going to show you just a little bit about some other activities happening around Lacey. We've had a lot going on over the last few years. Out on East Martin Way, there's been a significant amount of activity, especially in regards to multifamily. We've seen that really, a lot of multifamily proposals all throughout the city, really. The mark on Martin is a 488 unit apartment complex. About half of those are constructed right now in phase 1. Phase 2 is getting ready to come online with their building permits. So this is Martin Way, and then Gerald Street was constructed here, and then Litt Drive. And the apartment buildings that are constructed are on this side of the site. This is phase 2 on this side, on the east side, and we'll begin seeing some building permits for that phase shortly. On the north side of Litt Street and Ho, so immediately across from River Ridge High School, there's a 150-unit senior apartment facility that's also going in. That's currently under construction. I anticipate that's going to be done in the next 6 months, probably sooner than that, actually, as well. Some of the other commercial stuff, or Copperwood is another apartment complex, and that was permitted actually out in the county, but that's another large apartment multifamily complex that we've seen come online recently. Some commercial development, the OB Center, it's a smaller commercial building that'll have professional services in it, chiropractors, dentists, the like. And then Lacey Special Care is a memory care facility, and then BioLife is the plasma center out there on Martin Way. Okay. Yes.
Is Costco on that map?
Let's see. Whoops. Costco is right here. Here's Costco. Just for contact to locate yourself. You know, I don't know the number on Copperwood. Do either of you know? I think it's probably around 300, I would say, 200 to 300 units. Ryan mentioned another apartment complex coming in, another senior apartment complex down the Albertsons on Pacific and Carpenter. That's transitioning to an apartment building as well. So a lot of multifamily and more coming on, and that is one of the things, as we grow, that's one of the ways to handle growth, or is how you can handle growth is for some of those more dense multifamily units. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about, or now I'm going to talk a little bit about the Woodland District. And we have some things happening in the Woodland District that we're really excited about. This area has been known, for the lack of a better term, or envisioned for the lack of a better term, as Lacey's downtown, and has been since about the 90s. We've been working on, with the community, to develop a plan and to create a vision for the Woodland District. During the 90s, this was a primary hub of state offices. And then during the Great Recession, those state agencies and offices, they left the area, and they left about 240,000 square feet of empty office space in the Woodland Square Loop area. That's this area right here.
What are the streets?
So this is College Street and 6th Avenue. And so here's Fred Meyer, if that helps you orient. And then City Hall and St. Martin's University. So 240,000 square feet of vacant office space in the Woodland District. There wasn't much going on there in those office buildings or during the recession once those state agencies left. So after the exodus of the state offices, state agencies, the city again looked at the Woodland District and revisited the vision. Ryan spoke a little bit about that, but since we did that process, we started to actually see some reinvestment in the district, and we're really excited about it. I'll show you a few things that have happened or that are currently underway. I mentioned a behavioral health facility out here. We actually are getting one in the Woodland District as well, and we are actually really excited about that. That went through the Essential Public Facilities Conditional Use Permit process and got its approval in July of 2013. The exciting thing about this is that it is going to bring 150 employees across the wage spectrum to the city of Lacey and to the Woodland District. And those are people who are going to come into work in the Woodland District who need food, who need services, and will hopefully begin to also create reinvestment there in the district. So that's something we're pretty excited about. State agencies have also decided, or at least one state agency has decided, that they want to come back to the Woodland District. This is, I don't have the map, this is on Golf Club Road, actually immediately, it has two frontages, one on Golf Club Road, and then it's also immediately across from Huntermer Park. And this is a renovation and an expansion of an existing building. It'll also bring about 160 daytime employees to the Woodland District. So that's pretty exciting as well. There's also plans for new multifamily, as I was talking about, new apartment buildings in the Woodland District. 3 apartment projects, two on College Street, the intersection of College and 7th, one on the north side and one on the south side, for a total of up to 400 and I believe 30 units of apartments in the Woodland District. Some of those are going to be college designed for college students, working with St. Martin's to provide some housing for St. Martin students, and then others, it's anticipated, probably will also go for just non-college students, workers who are living in the area, or to live in the area. That is another view of one of the apartment projects, and that would go immediately adjacent to the South Sound Behavioral Health on the corner of Golf Club and Woodland Square Loop and 7th Avenue. You know, condo development is really difficult for developers, and I don't know if George can speak more to it, but once you, I can't speak, you can speak more to development, but it's a much riskier proposition for developers to build a condominium than it is because you can sell an apartment building, but you're always really invested in a condominium. And I think George can maybe speak to that a little bit more clearly in terms of why that is a riskier proposition. So those are some of the things that have happened, that are happening in the city. And I'm gonna also do another little plug, just like Ryan did before I turn things over to George, on something else that's happening, another planning process. The city is currently in I'm going back to some of my FEMA days, people have started calling me FEMA girl again, because we're looking at our hazard mitigation plan as required by the Federal Emergency Management Agency. So a hazards mitigation plan is an effort, and updating it is an effort to identify strategies and initiatives that the city can undertake to reduce the loss of life and property and reduce damage and the impact of disasters. The plan identifies risks and vulnerabilities associated with disasters and then identifies ways to protect people and property. So the plan is currently in its update process. It was originally adopted, I believe, in 2003, updated in 2010, and now is going through an update process again. It's going to be reviewed first by the Planning Commission on March 20th. That's a briefing, but it is a public process, and we encourage the public to come and attend those meetings. It'll then go through a public hearing process again at the Planning Commission. But if you'd like additional information about the hazards mitigation planning process, I've left my card up here. Feel free to give me a call or send me an email requesting additional information. We'll also have our plan when it's ready. We'll have a link to it on our website, and that'll be prior to the March 20th meeting. If you're interested in looking at how the city plans to take on some natural hazard mitigation planning. And with that, I'm going to introduce to you George Smith. George is our Economic Development Coordinator at the City of Lacey. After earning his bachelor's degree from Florida Atlantic University in Boca Raton, George Smith spent his first 20 years of his career in the banking industry, specializing in working with and lending to businesses in Florida and Washington. Like many community bankers, George volunteered his time with nonprofit organizations that were involved in economic development, which is how he found his true calling as a professional economic developer. After earning his MBA from Eastern Washington University in Spokane, he worked for 3 years as an economic development lender with a Council of Governments in Oregon, and then worked for 12 years as an economic developer with the City of Fresno, California, where he earned his Certified Economic Developer and Economic Development Financial Professional certifications. George has been the City of Lacey's Economic Development Coordinator since October of 2014. So we'll go ahead and bring George up here.
Well, hello again. I'm going to do something that's very uncomfortable for me. I'm going to try to keep my remarks short, and that does not come naturally. But having said that, I'm now going to talk about 4 things I hadn't planned on talking about, because I wanted to echo a couple things that Ryan and Sarah talked about. Ryan alluded to how the process happens in terms of how development happens, what the process is, and talked a lot about the state regulations with the Growth Management Act and things like that. Something that struck me as I moved from the private sector as a banker into the public sector was the extensive public engagement that happens. I saw that when I was working in Oregon. I saw that when I was working in California, and I've really seen it even more so since I've been in Lacey. The rules that we have, the zoning that we have, the various specific plans and sub-area plans that we have aren't something that a professional planner, despite their excellent education and good intentions, just foist upon the people of Lacey. Because it all starts with an extensive public engagement process. that's very, very sincere. It's bringing in a lot of people that are part of the community and finding out what they want their community to look like, and engaging with those and making sure that those are incorporated in. So really the top of the pyramid is all of you and everyone else in the community as well. It's the individuals, it's the residents. When we're working in a more of a commercial or industrial area, we want to make sure we're involving the property owners as well, because they obviously are stakeholders in that as well. So it's something to keep in mind as we go forward, and when these opportunities come along, to be engaged, to take advantage of them and let your voice be heard. Something else, when Sarah was talking about the issue with the land clearing, I can tell you as a former banker, in order to be able to get the financing to do that type of work, you have to have a pretty solid project in order to get a bank to lend to you. When you're looking at whether it's even financially feasible to do that, you're looking at, I'm going to put all this money out today and tomorrow, and then a year from now, and 2 years from now, and 5 years from now, and 10 years from now, I'm going to get that return. So you well know $1 today is worth a lot more than $1 will be a year from now, or 2 years from now, or 5 years from now, or 10 years from now. So they try to minimize that upfront cost and try, once their project is underway and they're spending money before they're getting money, to get through that process very quickly. So it's really counterintuitive to spend the money to clear the land and then just leave it that way. So that's something that they really try to avoid doing as much as we try to avoid having them do it. Also, that's really kind of a sad testament to what happened with South Bay Village, with what they were trying to do. In order for a developer to be able to get financing to build something like that, where you're going to have multiple tenants, to get the financing, you have to have good, solid pre-leases. And generally what they're looking for is what they call national credit tenants, the name brand stores that you would expect to see in a development like that. And if they can't get a good number of them, they're not going to be able to get their financing. So it takes a lot to be able to have a retail development get off the ground. You've got to have a site. You've got to have the right demographics and the right psychographics. Demographics are age and income. Psychographics is the study that looks at, you have two families and have exactly the same income, yet family A shops here at this store, family B shops there at that store. And the difference is kind of what their worldview is, how they see themselves, maybe where they are in their lives. And finally, the warehouses. I know that it's probably not your favorite feature of Northeast Lacy. And the fact that we're trying to do things to encourage some more of them, although we're running out of land very quickly, probably doesn't make me the most popular guy in the room right now. At the same time, do you really want to be financially invested in a community that doesn't have a strong and solid economy? Because, in some respects, it might be nice to live someplace that's very, very pastoral, not a lot going on, but do you really want to be financially invested in that type of community where you'll be lucky to get 3/4 for your house that what you paid for it 5 or 10 years ago? And a lot of cities in what they refer to as the flyover states, and some of in the Midwest, where the communities are literally dying. There are no job opportunities, so the young people leave. And as the older people move on or pass on, the population is actually beginning to wither. It's also becoming increasingly difficult for some of those communities to be able to provide public services because the tax base is going away as well. So that's part of what we try to do. So that is my long introduction to things I wasn't even planning to talk about. So I've already been well introduced, so let me tell you, my focus is on meeting the needs of the entire community, but another piece of that is also helping to generate the revenue to fund essential public services. Police, fire, parks, things that matter about the quality of life. There are two sources of funding for most local governments. Property tax is one of them, and sales tax is the other. So property tax, you guys elect our city council, or you elect a whole new city council, and they just go nuts and decide, you know what, we need more money, we're just going to double property taxes. Well, first of all, they're not going to stay in office very long, but secondly, what they're wanting to do, if they were to do something like that, isn't legal. It isn't legal in Washington. It's not legal in most other states. There are limitations to how much property taxes can go up based upon a number of characteristics, but part of it is just because housing prices right now are soaring, it doesn't mean the property taxes on that house are going up as dramatically. So the other source is sales tax. In Washington, goods are taxed, tangible products that you can buy, and restaurant meals are taxed. Most grocery items for consumption that you take home and prepare aren't taxed. Services aren't taxed. So we have a vested interest in making sure that we are attracting the very types of businesses I think you'd like to have out here in the way of restaurants and retail, because it generates sales tax that helps to pay for cops and all of those things. So this is the good news that I wish I had to share with you. When are we getting our grocery store north of I-5? When are we getting our outlet mall? When is Gateway finally going to break ground? Where's our retail? Where are our restaurants and the services that we feel we should have? So I'll start with grocery stores. To build a grocery store is expensive, or to lease a space for a grocery store is expensive. They're big. You've got to heat them. You've got to air condition them. You've got to do all that refrigeration. Then you've got to fill them with people. Our minimum wage in Washington is fairly high. The largest grocery store chain in the state, Safeway, is also unionized, so the wages are pretty good. So it's pretty expensive. And unique in Western Washington, we don't have, at least in this part of Western Washington, we don't have a lot of grocery store chains. Albertsons isn't going to come in because Albertsons and Safeway fell in love and got married. So there's still some Albertsons around, but they're really Safeway. Hagen's might have been an option. They actually tried to buy out some of the extra Albertson stores. That didn't work out so well for them. In fact, some of them are now back to being Albertsons. Hagen's is not growing at the moment. So we've got Safeway. Walmart is in the grocery business and in a big way. So something that those chains are starting, just like everybody else, is online sales. My wife, who is a registered dietitian by trade, earned her doctorate in food nutrition management, will not have someone else pick out her produce for her. So she's always going to go to the store to do that. The canned goods, not so much, but people feel strongly about that. But short of that, what they're trying to do is Safeway and Walmart in particular, and in other areas that have other stores, Kroger, who owns Fred Meyer and QFC, they're experimenting with it. I know with Safeway and Walmart both, every day it seems like they're adding new zip codes. So if we don't have it yet, we will have it sooner or later. There's also some companies that actually aren't affiliated with grocery stores that also do grocery delivery. I know Freddy's is also doing something now where you can order online and just go and literally park in a certain parking space and they'll come bring your stuff to you. Again, you can't pick out your own produce that way. And I've actually, now that I've changed slides, I also had Whole Foods on there with Amazon. I imagine most of you are aware, Amazon acquired Whole Foods. So we did a very unscientific survey the year after I arrived because we wanted to gauge what the interests were. We thought we knew who ought to be here that isn't here, but we have the right demographics. But we wanted to make sure that what we were seeking was what people really wanted. And in the top 10 list, which are a mixture of restaurants and retail stores, Whole Foods was in there, so was Trader Joe's. So Whole Foods, I don't see us getting a Whole Foods anytime soon. We've got the right demographics. We've absolutely got the right psychographics. There just aren't enough of us. So Whole Foods needs, if you think about where they typically are located, they tend to be in more densely urban areas and with demographics and psychographics that are like ours. And maybe it's just as well we didn't get one because with Amazon taking them over, they're having some struggles. If you can't sleep one night and you're at the computer and you're thinking, I want to look at something that's going to just make me feel good about it, type in the words Whole Foods empty shelves. They're starting to make it into the general media, but in the trades, it's just all over the place right now. Right around the time Amazon bought them, they implemented a new inventory management system. Whole Foods, because their produce is absolutely, if it's not fresh and smells really good and pretty, it's gone. So they have a lot of food waste, so that impacts their profits. So they implemented this new inventory management system, and it's not working right for them. So now they're having stores where you go in and there's nothing there. They have also experimented with a new concept store called 365. 365 is their store brand. They've done a couple of them in Southern California. They've actually got one in Bellevue. In fact, they closed the one in Bellevue, then the mall sold them, so I think they're going to reopen it. They still haven't worked out the details. It's a smaller format store, lower price point. I think eventually something like that would be a really good fit here, and I think we would be, from their perspective, a good fit for them. So not today or tomorrow, but that's one option. I just pulled this out of Business Insider on Friday because it's very, very telling. Everything is about online this, online that, online the other thing. That and millennials, jeez. Anyway, so even the pessimistic ideas just a few months ago as far as the online sales for grocery items, even the optimistic ones are being exceeded. So even the pessimistic has been kind of reset. So I think the grocers right now are very much on the sidelines waiting to see, do we need to even bother opening any more stores? You know, if you're Safeway and you've got a store on the other side of I-5, the reality is, if there's nothing else up here, your customers really are going to go there. They're not going to like it. The store's going to be mobbed all the time. The parking lot's going to be a death trap. But nonetheless, people are going to go there. They're not going to lose any business by virtue of not being there. Now, if others come in, then they may reconsider. Trader Joe's, by the way, we're not going to get one of those anytime either, and which is really galling since one of those big giant buildings is their warehouse. We've talked to them a number of times. They love us, but they're in a growth mode right now where they're really trying to capture markets where they're not. So for what it would cost to build a store in Lacey and cannibalize some of the sales from that horrible location they've got over in that other city that starts with O, they would be better off spending the same amount of money and going into Tampa, Florida, where they don't have any stores yet, or into some big city in Texas where they don't have any stores yet. So their strategy right now is to, get in there and establish a beachhead all over the country, and then they'll go back and more effectively saturate the market. So grocery stores are trying to avoid this. And I can tell you as a professional economic developer, there are few things that are harder to deal with than a big, empty, dead grocery store. Sarah mentioned the senior apartments that are going in at Pacific and Carpenter. As an economic developer, housing is really nice, but I don't care as much as I probably should. But the reality is, that is my favorite project in the whole city because it's going to take out that Albertsons because it was an absolute albatross. It was owned by Albertsons. Albertsons and Safeway are the same people now. There's a Safeway across the street. Albertsons won't allow it to be used as a grocery store. It's not useful as anything else. It's not subdividable in any kind of meaningful way. It's a giant space. There are all kinds of restrictions on the shopping center that limit you can't do this and you can't do this and you can't do this. Really what it comes down to, you can't do much of anything. So by taking it completely off the market, tearing it down, building senior apartments, it solves a problem. So I'm glad we don't have any more of these sitting around. Any of you that have spent any time in California or Arizona, you may recognize Fresh and Easy. A company called Tesco. They are a British company, huge grocer in Europe and especially in the United Kingdom, decided for a foray into the United States. They opened a couple of these stores in Arizona and Southern California, and I think they picked some good locations. They thought it was working. They set up a warehouse and things like that, and they opened a bunch of them. I was living in Fresno when they came into that market. They were kind of nice. They were very small format, about 10 to 15,000 square feet. By comparison, a Safeway is probably between 50 and 70,000, depending on how big and grand it is. They focused on their store brands. Price point was really good. They like Trader Joe's. They did sampling, and people would try the stuff. It was very good. It was very nice. they went into areas where there was already grocery stores. They didn't go into old locations, they built brand new stores, and it just didn't work. So they finally ended up closing, they withdrew, they wrote off billions of dollars. So I think that spooked a lot of other potential operators. So we need to be mindful that we don't end up with thinking we've got a solution and then not having one. What I think we're going to get will be north of I-5. We will get a grocery store. It won't be today, it won't be tomorrow, but we will get one. And I think it's probably a really good chance it's going to be one of these three. Aldi is, I think, the most likely. Aldi is a German chain. They started opening up in the southeast, and they're moving in this direction. Sort of like Fresh and Easy, they feature their store brands. Very good price point from what I understand from reading the trades. Similar to what you'd see at Grocery Outlet, but it's not like Grocery Outlet. It's very, very new and nice. I'm not trashing them. It's a different market. The stores again are probably in 15 to 20,000 square foot range. They've got a real head start on that. A second outfit, also from Germany, interestingly, is Lidl, L-I-D-L. They're kind of following what Aldi did. They're several lengths back. So I think Aldi's more likely to come here first, unless Lidl decides it's really working, let's jump over Aldi and go into the markets where they're not yet. The third potential is a company called Sprouts. They call themselves Sprouts Farmers Market. They had just opened in Fresno when I left. I never had occasion to go there. Heard kind of nasty gossip from a couple people that went there, because they have the name Farmers Market in their name. So they're trying to be sort of like Trader Joe's, not quite like Whole Foods, but the idea, fresh, really nice produce and stuff like that. From what I understand, from what people told me, was you wouldn't get the produce confused with Whole Foods. They have kind of odd locations, but it seems to work for them. They're taking the opposite approach from Trader Joe's. They're going in and saturating markets. So they're really saturating Arizona and California, but we would be an obvious next step, especially in an area like this where there aren't a lot of different grocery store chains. So that's where I think we're headed grocery store-wise. Not the news you wanted, but it's the news that it is. Yes, sir?
What about QFC?
QFC is owned by Kroger, which also owns Freddy's. I know when I lived in Spokane, we didn't have them over there, but I know that it seemed like they had a reputation for being really good, really premium. Haven't encountered that many of them. Know the one we've got in Lacey. I lived in Southeast Lacey when I first moved here, and it just didn't seem to be that busy, which made me a little worried about it. They don't seem to be trying to grow that brand, and I don't know what their long-term strategy is. Yes, ma'am.
I've had two city employees tell me there's going to be a Fred Meyer down by...
I've heard those rumors too, and I love the idea. There are no plans in at this point for that. That doesn't mean it couldn't change. Certainly the one in Lacey, with all the money they've spent redoing the parking lot, that place is mobbed all the time. I know never to buy anything for sales tax, but anything that isn't for sales tax, if I happen to be down in Tumwater, I might stop at that one, and that one's mobbed too. So it seems like the area, this really is a separate market from where the Freddy's is in Lacey, so near Woodland Square. But I think that would be a good fit. I just don't know what their approach is right now. I don't know within Kroger what they have to be able to show in their business model to be able to get the capital to do it. But I heard those rumors too. I wish they were true. Retail. Sears, I put it up here. It just makes me sad. When I was a very, very young banker, to make ends meet, I worked part-time at night and on weekends at Sears, along with a bunch of young teachers who were trying to do the same thing. It was still a great store back then. Somebody brings something in they bought 5 years ago and return it, no questions asked. Completely different store now. Actually, the company that owns them also owns Kmart, and you can see what a great job they're doing with that. It's no secret, we still have our Sears and Lacey. I keep holding my breath. I was concerned when my wife told me that they had closed out their Land's End at our Sears. Every death watch there is of retail, Sears is at the top of the list. It's just the way it is. It's really sad. Kmart, you need to pack a lunch to go to a Kmart now. The closest one we had was down in Centralia, Chehalis. It's closing. But But even stores like Macy's are closing stores. Not like Sears, but it's happening. Whole shopping malls are closing. They're referring to it as the retail apocalypse. The typical model is, and this is out of Business Insider and CNN Money, the typical model is when you have a recession, especially a bad one like the Great Recession, retailers close stores. Big surprise. As soon as the economy turns around, their approach turns around. They start expanding, building bigger, better stores, adding new stores, new markets. I mean, we saw the population that's growing in the United States. And especially when the economy is really going great guns, they're opening stores left and right. So 2017, the economy is going great guns, and we closed more stores than ever, even during the Great Recession. And the year that it topped that was 2016. So, and down here, this bottom one is actually from the end of December, and 17 retailers on death watch, and unfortunately Sears is one of them. It's they have closed a lot of stores. Barnes & Noble, there was Borders and Barnes & Noble. When I was in Fresno, there was one right across the street from each other. And, big giant stores that did really good, and all of a sudden, neither of them was doing that well, but Borders was doing worse. Of course, they closed all their stores. It's really tough. Amazon is really great competition. I work at City Hall, and one of the great sources of books is right next door to me, the Lacey Woodland Library, Timberland Library, rather, Woodland Square. If you can't see all the names on here, don't worry about it. That's not really the point. These are the stores, and this was like in October when this came out, of all the stores that had closed and how many stores. Radio Shack and Payless are near the top. Radio Shack has virtually closed all their stores. Surprisingly, there are some stores on here that had been the darlings of millennials. Can you believe it? Even millennials, aren't enough to be able to keep these folks afloat. But something that's really disturbing. Think about 2017, going great guns, especially the wealthy have been doing especially well, the 1%, the 5%, whatever you want to say. The core market for a luxury retailer like Neiman Marcus. Neiman Marcus doesn't have that many stores around the country. Neiman Marcus closed 10 stores in 2017. So that's pretty startling. So it's across the board where the retail apocalypse is hitting. Of course, Sports Authority, those are all gone now too. So it seems like the approach that Ryan and Sarah took was they took the broad approach and then they narrowed it down, the long range, down to the more current. Mine was the horrible, depressing news. Now I'm going to see if I can bring us back from that a little bit. So I'm sorry. I want to give you the truth, the whole truth, the unvarnished truth. There are bright spots. In the retail side, something called experiential. Recreational types of businesses, entertainment type of businesses, malls that are in relatively good shape that lose a relatively good anchor. What they've found is that they can replace it with an experiential tenant. They can actually do better than they were doing before their anchor started getting sick. So a couple of names that are often associated with that are, why am I going to go blank on this? Oh, God. Dave & Buster's, thank you. That's one of the ones I needed. Dave & Buster's and Lucky Strikes. They're both kind of a premium bowling alley. It's very experiential. The millennials love those places. So that really helps. If they don't have a theater, sometimes a theater will help as well. Things things you can't order on Amazon. That's what it kind of comes down to. Restaurants are always good. Now, restaurants have a life cycle anyway. Interestingly, number one on that survey that we did was Olive Garden. Millennials aren't amused with Olive Garden, so Olive Garden is not opening more restaurants. In fact, they're closing some because they're just not popular anymore. But there are always new concepts happening with restaurants, and it seems like a lot of the newer concepts are smaller. They're not fast food. They're not the whole sit down, wait in line for an hour, and then sit down like Olive Garden. They're kind of in between, fast casual, things like that. They don't need a huge market. They don't need a huge space. Those types of things would fit really well in an area like this because we've got the right demographics, we've got the right psychographics. That's encouraging. Also, when it comes to development, greenfields, previously undeveloped property is a whole lot less expensive to develop than trying to redevelop an existing property. If you're redeveloping an existing property, you're paying for the improvements that are there that you're going to tear down. You're spending the money to tear them down. You may have to redo some infrastructure that may be old and decrepit. You may be an unpleasant surprise into that big giant parking lot that you don't know about. And heaven help you if there's any kind of environmental contamination, because that can take years to clean up and, you know, a bottomless pit of money. So that's important to consider when we think about Northeast Lacy. Because Northeast Lacy's demographics and psychographics are great. The limiting factor is there's only so many of us. The area around Gateway is the only large tract of undeveloped property with the right zoning for retail types of uses. So that's also encouraging. Gateway is the area around where Cabela's is. It was that was going to be, you know, so many things, and then the recession hit, and then it was nothing. The area around I-5 is a retail blank slate, and what that means is we don't have a big dead shopping mall or a big dead Kmart with, you know, with the vultures circling above it, because that repels developers and retailers. They don't want to go near something like that. We also don't have anything else bad up there. We don't have a toxic waste dump or something else where, you know, no, I don't want to be near that thing. So that really helps. And I-5 visibility and access is always a good thing. The outlet mall. So the outlet mall was one of the components of Gateway. Some of the retailers that are in that list of retailers that closed are the types of stores that you often find in outlet malls. However, for the most part, the outlet malls have not been hit nearly to the extent that the rest of retail has been in the retail apocalypse. The developer of the outlet mall portion, Craig Realty, is really, really good. This is a shot of the shops at Woodburn. It's on I-5, just south of Portland, south of Wilsonville, just before you get to Salem. I lived down near there for a couple of years when I was working for the Council of Governments. And he was the original developer. He developed it through all the expansions. Really good place, still doing really well. He subsequently sold it. He also has done turnarounds. If any of you have spent any time in Los Angeles and you know the Citadel on I-5 just south of downtown LA, you can't miss it because you're sitting in traffic going 3 miles an hour even at 3 o'clock in the morning. Huge place, you cannot miss it. It has a huge impact. The original developer, I don't know what they were thinking. We stopped there for the first time like in 2002, and why would we ever go back? This developer bought it, repositioned it, re-tenanted it, and they are doing billions of dollars in sales. So he's the right developer. So we're very fortunate with that. Really good developers of these types of projects normally have a whole cadre of retailers that follow them. They know if he's doing this, and I want to be here, and I want to be co-tenant with so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. It is a bit of a chicken and egg. Until you get so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, you don't get everybody else who comes along. And that's the delay, because too many of the so-and-sos right now are standing on the sidelines waiting to see what's going to happen with the shakeout. So, location, 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 and timing. Two things that matter a whole, or four things that matter a whole lot in real estate. For Lacy, and especially Northeast Lacy, it's a great location. The timing is kind of interesting. The Great Recession was horrible. It did awful things to people. People were financially wiped out. Families were wiped out. Great businesses closed. And in our area, the Gateway project was completely derailed. But if there is a silver lining in this, it may be that the Gateway project was still derailed. Because if the Great Recession hadn't happened when it did, by now it probably would have been built. And most of the types of businesses that would have gone in there in big boxes and in the smaller stores are the very ones that are closing stores left and right. And then we would have had the vultures circling over this vast wasteland of big empty buildings that are almost impossible to try to fill again. And then you're looking at a redevelopment project. And in that respect, even though it might have been nice to have them when we would have had them, we probably wouldn't have them now anyway. So I'm trying to see the silver lining in this, and I think that might be. So the reality is major development is going to be delayed until retail stabilizes. So enough about retail and enough, I've addressed the questions that you guys, surprisingly, these questions weren't asked, and they were the ones I was expecting. I'm going to talk just a little bit more about what we do to try to build the economy. My role as an economic developer is to build the wealth of the community through business retention and expansion. Whether you're Lacey, Washington, whether you're New York City or San Francisco or the Silicon Valley or some little farming community of 500 people in rural Manitoba, if you're going to spend any money on economic development at all, the most effective money you can spend is on business retention and expansion. You've got businesses that are already here. They've found a market here. It's so much easier and so much more effective to work with them, to encourage them to stay, to help them grow, help them build their capacity, help them find money when they need it, help them find the training that's going to help them be more effective, the data and information that's going to help them be able to build their market, and encourage them. And also as an economic developer, a lot of what I do sometimes is moving obstacles out of the way. Sometimes we inadvertently create them ourselves. Business attraction, obviously. Entrepreneurship, business advocacy, business advancement, providing information and training, and access to capital. As a former banker, sometimes I may see access to capital as a solution to more problems than it actually is. My parents told me when I was a kid, he said, you know, George, money doesn't buy happiness. And my parents were right, money doesn't buy happiness. But what I have found is money does solve a lot of problems that kind of keeps happiness at bay or dampens happiness. And for businesses, it's oxygen. It's the essential oxygen that burns the fire of the engine of those businesses. So when we're doing business attraction, we first work with the businesses we've got to find out who isn't here who ought to be here in your line of work, your suppliers, your strategic partners, sometimes your competitors. Sometimes businesses actually do better if their competitors are nearby. They are more successful that way. It works with furniture stores and car dealers. We want to make sure we're building the wealth of the citizens of Lacey. We also want to make sure we're doing everything we can to enhance the quality of life. And that may seem odd, but a generation or two ago, you went out and recruited a business and they'd come to your community, and if you were cheap, it was even better. Back when we actually made things in this country, because businesses go where the raw materials are. Well, the raw materials now for most businesses are a workforce, an educated, well-trained, cooperative workforce. And that's something we have in spades here. So you actually just need to have the workforce. Well, how do you get the workforce? They're drawn by quality of life. Millennials in particular will decide, I want to live there because it's a nice place to be, and then I'll worry about getting a job. So they start to congregate in these wonderful places. The companies come there to get the workforce. So we need to make sure that we're not doing anything that's going to harm our quality of life, not just to make our own citizens happy, but for our own financial well-being as well. So we build the quality of life, we enhance the quality of life, we draw the workforce, which in turn draws the businesses, that in turn then helps build the wealth so we can continue to build the quality of life. It becomes a virtuous cycle. We want to make sure we're meeting the needs of the entire community, creating and bringing good jobs. And we also need to generate revenue for essential public services, sales tax. Entrepreneurship. I'm going to do a commercial right now for one of our partnerships, which is the Lacy Makerspace. How many of you have heard of a makerspace? Cool. Let me tell you what it is. As the name suggests, it's a space or a place to make stuff. But it's a lot more than that. It's really cool equipment. State-of-the-art 3D printers, not just plastic, but all kinds of media. CNC machines, plasma cutters, all kinds of really cool, sophisticated, useful equipment. And the training to understand how to safely use it and how to appropriately use it, the right tool for the right job. And a creative atmosphere so the people that have a burning idea, something that they can see it in their mind's eye, they want to actually make it and see if maybe there's a commercial application. Maybe they can turn this into a business. So part of what we would be doing with the Lacy Makerspace is creating that space and that environment, then partnering with, economic development is all about effective collaboration, partnering with the Thurston Economic Development Council, with St. Martin's University, with the South Puget Sound Community College, to be able to then help that entrepreneur figure out how to effectively market and actually set up and run a business. So that's what we're trying to do. If ever you've been curious about 3D printers, we have one of our first partnerships, which is with St. Martin's University. We're going to be offering on 3 Saturdays for $25, introductory orientation to 3D printing. It's, as I said, $25. It's offered on 3 different dates. You don't go to all 3, you just go to one. March 17th, April 14th, and April 21st. They'll have sign up online. I've got some business cards for the Lacy Makerspace, which is a partnership of the city, St. Martin's University, and the Thurston Economic Development Council, if you're interested. We also have a partnership with the Port, where we're going to the Port has acquired some property right on Willamette as you come in. It is about 10 to 12,000 square feet. We're going to be working with them to where the front building, which is empty right now, part of it will be an incubator for small businesses. Part of it will be a landing space for small businesses that are, at the point where they need to move out of their garage. There's not a lot of those small industrial spaces available right now. So this is something that'll be very useful. And we have other partnerships as well.
Could you please repeat those dates that you're going to give information about the Makerspace?
Certainly. The Lacy Makerspace, and as I said, I've got the cards up here with their web address. It's lacymakerspace.org. What a surprise. But in partnership with St. Martin's University, the 3D printing class, which is $25, is March 17th, April 14th, and April 21st. It's a most day thing. It runs from 9 to 3 p.m. They're serving coffee. You need to kind of bring your own lunch. I use this aerial for marketing, and this aerial is not that old, and I will tell you, it's woefully out of date. You saw with the maps that Ryan and Sarah both showed. Well, you've now got all of this area immediately south of the Target Distribution Center, the 2 million square foot building, is where IDS is going in, 1.8 million square feet. Up here, most of these spaces are now taken. So what we end up with is most of those large parcels are either developed or under development. So what's left are smaller parcels, like, for example, Sarah mentioned the one that's 22 acres. Out of the 22 acres, probably about 5 acres of it is developable. The rest is wetlands scattered all over the property. So we're turning that corner where we're just about out of those big parcels. So one of the things that we were trying to do to make sure that we weren't just building big giant buildings, well, we don't build them, but we weren't attracting people that were building big giant buildings with no jobs in them, just stuff, was the types of businesses that we tried to get in there. For a while, the city actually had moratoriums on those really large buildings. So she mentioned Uline, she mentioned Medline. Both of those are family-owned businesses, so bad day on Wall Street, they don't lay off half their workforce. And what they're able to do is they pay above market for their workers. Their workers have a career path, and it's quite job dense. Uline is looking at 150 jobs to start. Medline close to that as well, and we'll continue on from there. So the folks that are coming in with those big buildings are putting all these trucks on the road. It's a hassle, but at the same time, it is good for our economy. Exit 111, the Marvin Road I-5 interchange. The city had lobbied for a couple of years to try to get funding to be able to get that interchange improved. I don't have to tell you how difficult it's been, and every day it gets a little worse. That money came through. The Washington Department of WashDOT, the Department of Transportation, is going to begin work on this very soon. They actually sent me the handout that I'm giving you. There's 2 things. There's a website on there which I would really encourage you to go to, because with that it can show you 2 things. The first is there's an update that you can sign up for, so that as soon as they're going to do anything, they decide it, they announce it, it goes out. So you'll get those emails every time something's going to happen with it, because the real work is going to start this summer. The second thing, there's a 4-minute YouTube video that you're going to want to look at. The interchange is going to be designed as what's called a diverging diamond. It's a very different type of interchange. It's the first one in the state of Washington. They've been around for almost 10 years now. They're a really unique design. The cool thing about them is they really move traffic through quickly. They're safer. There's less conflict points. And in addition to that, to be able to dramatically increase the capacity, they don't have to tear down the old the old overpass and build a new one, which takes years and a fortune and a lot of disruption. They actually can use what's already there. They just need to reconfigure it. So their approaches, you've got two approaches. You've got a boo-boo on your arm. You can either, when it's all better, you can either pull the Band-Aid off real slow, and it doesn't hurt all that bad, it hurts for a long time, or you can rip it off. It really hurts, but then you're done with it. They're going with the whip the Band-Aid off approach. As you probably might guess, they're going to need to reconfigure the ramps, particularly the ramp that comes if you're coming back from Tacoma and getting off on Marvin Road. The angle is wrong, the pitch is wrong, a lot of things are wrong. They cannot do it without closing the ramp occasionally. They've committed they're going to do it at night and weekends. They've committed to us that they're going to find out what a weekend really is. And I'm not trashing them, but think about all the truck traffic. Do they all go out on Friday night, but not on Sunday night? Do they all go out on Sunday night, but not Friday night? So we want to make sure that they're mindful of that so they don't close it when it's going to be busy and leave it open when it's not so busy. So that's part of the benefit of having those updates. They're also going to be doing community plans. We have encouraged them to have one here with all of you and all of your neighbors. So we're going to do everything we can to get them to do that. We're also going to make the rounds with them, with the businesses, so that they're prepared, so that it doesn't create a huge mess, not just for them, but for you guys at the same time. So again, the website is on the handout that I will give you before you leave. I didn't want to give them to you before because I was afraid otherwise I'd only be looking at the tops of your heads instead of your smiling faces. I think we're out of time. Thank you very much for your time and attention and making us feel so welcome. Thank you.